For a long time, the formula felt simple. If you worked hard, showed up consistently, and improved your skills, life would slowly get better. You might not become rich overnight, but effort would compound. More work meant more stability. More experience meant higher pay. More time meant progress. That belief shaped how people planned their lives. Education felt like an investment. Careers felt like ladders. Hard work felt reliable. Today, that relationship feels weaker. People work harder than previous generations. They are more productive, more educated, more connected, and yet many feel like they're running in place. So what changed? Why does working hard no longer feel like a path to wealth? To answer that, we have to separate effort from outcome, because effort still matters, but the system it operates inside has changed. The first thing to understand is that income and wealth are not the same thing. Income comes from work. Wealth comes from ownership. Income is what you earn. Wealth is what you own. Assets that generate value even when you're not actively working. For much of the 20th century, these two were closely linked. You worked, you earned income, you saved, you bought assets. Over time, income turned into wealth. That pathway still exists, but it has become much narrower. Not because people stopped working, but because the returns to ownership began growing much faster than the returns to labor. This shift is visible in the data. Productivity has continued to rise. Workers produce more value per hour than ever before, but wages have not kept pace. Instead, a growing share of economic gains flows elsewhere. To shareholders, to asset owners, to those who already own productive assets. This doesn't mean workers are less valuable. It means the system increasingly rewards ownership more than participation. Hard work primarily increases income. But income alone doesn't build wealth if asset prices rise faster than pay. You can work longer hours, you can become more efficient, you can gain new skills. But if the price of assets rises faster than your income, your effort doesn't translate into lasting security. You're moving forward, but the finish line is moving faster. Education was supposed to close this gap. More skills meant higher pay. Higher pay meant upward mobility. For a while this worked, but over time, education became more expensive. Tuition rose faster than wages. Credentials multiplied, the wage premium narrowed. Degrees stopped guaranteeing outcomes. At the same time, student debt increased. So many people started their working lives already behind. Working hard no longer meant building wealth first. It meant servicing debt first. Effort became maintenance, not accumulation. Another change happened quietly inside companies. Modern businesses prioritize efficiency, scalability, and cost control. This rewards systems, not individuals. Hard work still matters, but it is often absorbed into organizational output rather than individual compensation. Your productivity increases, but your leverage does not. Unless you own part of the system, your effort benefits the structure more than yourself. This helps explain why promotions feel rarer. Organizations flatten hierarchies, they outsource, they automate. The latter didn't disappear, but it lost rungs. Working harder doesn't necessarily move you up. It often just keeps you relevant. There's also a factor that hard work can't overcome: timing. Wealth accumulation is heavily influenced by when you enter the system. People who entered housing or stock markets earlier benefited from decades of asset appreciation. Those entering later face higher prices and lower expected returns. Two people can work equally hard, earn similar incomes, make similar choices, and end up with very different outcomes. Not because of discipline, but because of entry point. Effort doesn't erase starting conditions. Debt also plays a central role. Debt can accelerate progress, but it can also trap it. For many workers, debt replaced savings. Instead of building assets, income goes towards servicing obligations. Student loans, mortgages, credit cards. This limits flexibility. Hard work becomes about staying afloat, not getting ahead. Debt doesn't feel reckless, it feels necessary. But it quietly consumes the future gains that effort is supposed to produce. At the same time, the economy increasingly rewards scale. Platforms, networks, capital-intensive businesses. In these environments, marginal effort has diminishing returns. Your individual contribution matters less relative to the system you're part of. You work more. But the outcome barely changes. This makes hard work feel invisible. Not because it lacks value, but because the system captures it elsewhere. There's also a psychological shift. Humans respond to reinforcement. When effort reliably improved life, people invested more effort. When effort stops changing outcomes, people conserve energy. This isn't laziness, it's rational behavior. This helps explain burnout. Burnout isn't just about working too much, it's about working without progress. When effort disconnects from reward, motivation collapses. People don't stop working because they dislike effort. They stop because effort feels futile. Another shift changed how effort feels. Risk moved. In the past, employment absorbed uncertainty. Benefits cushioned shocks. Pensions smoothed volatility. Failure was survivable. Today, much of that risk sits with individuals. Healthcare costs, housing instability, job precarity. A single setback can erase years of work. This makes people cautious. They work hard, but avoid risks that could lead to higher rewards. Effort becomes defensive, focused on survival, not growth. This also explains why traditional advice feels hollow. Work harder, improve your skills, stay disciplined. These ideas assume a system where effort compounds naturally. That system no longer operates the same way. Effort still matters, but it doesn't compound by default. Ownership does. There's a reason this disconnect feels so unsettling. Most people can sense that effort should matter. They see colleagues working harder. They see themselves gaining experience. They feel busier, more capable, more stretched than before. And in many ways, they are more capable. The problem is that the system still sends signals that effort will be rewarded, even when the rewards are capped. Performance reviews, merit-based raises, career advice, productivity metrics. All of these reinforce the idea that progress is linear, that if you keep doing more, something must eventually give. But when outcomes stop scaling with effort, those signals become misleading. They create motion without momentum. People feel like they're accelerating, but not arriving. Another subtle shift changed how wealth is experienced. Wealth used to be measured in absolute terms. Could you afford a home? Could you support a family? Could you retire? Those were concrete milestones. Today, wealth is increasingly relative. It's not about having enough. It's about keeping up with rising baselines. Housing prices rise, education costs rise, healthcare costs rise. So even when income increases, it often just restores what was lost. A raise doesn't feel like progress, it feels like recovery. Effort goes into maintaining position, not improving it. This makes success feel temporary, something you have to constantly defend. What truly separates wealth from income is margin. Margin is the space between what you earn and what you must spend. That space is what allows risk. It allows experimentation. It allows compounding. As living costs rose faster than wages, that margin shrank, not to zero, but close enough to matter. When margins are thin, effort becomes fragile. One mistake matters more. One interruption lasts longer. One bad year can undo several good ones. This changes behavior. People work hard, but cautiously. They optimize for predictability, not upside. And predictable effort rarely creates wealth. It's tempting to explain this gap with personal decisions. Who studied what? Who invested early? Who took risks? Those factors matter, but they don't explain why an entire generation feels the same pressure. When outcomes diverge across millions of people at once, the cause isn't personal. It's structural. Systems determine which behaviors are rewarded, and over time, people adapt. They don't stop working, they stop expecting work alone to change their future. That shift isn't pessimism, it's learning. So if effort doesn't compound the way it once did, what does? Ownership, control over assets, exposure to upside. This doesn't mean everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. It means wealth increasingly depends on whether your work builds something you own, whether your compensation includes participation, not just payment, whether your effort scales beyond your time. Without those elements, effort has a ceiling. You can push against it, but you can't break through it with persistence alone. Understanding this shift doesn't make effort meaningless. It makes expectations realistic. It explains why advice feels outdated, why burnout is widespread, why people feel tired without feeling lazy. The frustration isn't psychological, it's structural. People are doing what the system taught them to do. The system just stopped delivering the same results. Working hard still has value, but wealth today depends less on effort itself and more on how effort connects to ownership, timing, and scale. Once you see that clearly, the confusion lifts, the disappointment makes sense, and the question stops being, why am I working so hard and getting nowhere? And becomes what does effort actually lead to now? Because the system didn't remove hard work, it quietly changed what hard work produces.